Hey, good evening, everybody. We've got folks joining us already, which is awesome. And very shortly here, I'm going to introduce Nicole Sanders, who's running for drug court, judge in the drug court in Hamilton County. And I am very excited to have her. Nicole and I were actually chatting just last week out at the Board of Elections with all the craziness going on out there and good craziness, all the energy. And I was learning more about her background, and so we're very excited to hear about that here momentarily. Just a reminder, and sometimes I forget to say this at the beginning, but please drop a comment, whether you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, either of the pages that we're up on here. I can keep an eye on your comments or questions for Nicole, and so we're happy to touch on those. And we've got a bunch of people joining us now, so Nicole, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for the invitation to come and share, Derek. How are you this evening?
Absolutely. Things are good. And you were telling me you actually just came from the Board of Elections, and we'll touch on more of how the campaign's going later on in our half hour. But you're telling me there's a lot of energy still today on this kind of chilly, rainy Monday.
There is. I was there at 7 o'clock this morning, and there was a line for me. When I left, it was down and almost around the building. And then I came back after work, and people just coming through the rain and coming to get the slates. It's wonderful. The energy is palpable. You can feel it. So it was nice to see that, especially on a cold, rainy day like today.
Indeed. We got 15 days, so we need everybody to stay strong and stay energized. But before we get into all that, let's talk a little bit more about you, and especially your background. I know you grew up in Madisonville, right, in Cincinnati, and tell us a little bit about how your background and how that led you to be here today as an attorney, magistrate, now running for judge, and how all of that impacted your desire for public service.
So you're right. I grew up in Madisonville. My mom was a single parent. And I had a great childhood. I had 3 uncles that had farms in Amelia, Ohio. So I spent summers there getting in trouble. There's a lot of trouble you can get on the farm. Cow tipping is real. Know how to drive a tractor. And then I grew up, of course, in Madisonville. Went to Whitboro High School. Yay, Whitboro Tigers. I kind of took a little bit of a deviation. I unfortunately suffer from a learning disability, which impacted my high school career. And so I withdrew from school with the specific goal of taking the GED. So I passed the GED. I remember the day, February 18th, 1992, because that was my goal. And just kind of sat back for a little bit, just tried how to figure out what I wanted to do. And through some not bad circumstances, but through some things that I saw some other people going through. I'm always the type of person to jump in and try to defend people. And I had a friend and a mentor was like, since you want to defend people, you got to go to law school. I was like, law school? I just have a GED. So she was like, but you can do it. So I enrolled at the University of Cincinnati and got my BS in 3 years. I had a focus in paralegal studies because I wanted to make sure that the law was actually something I wanted to do. So when I graduated from the paralegal program, I actually worked at O'Connor, China Levy, which is a scrappy, small personal injury firm, and worked there actually until I was accepted into the University of Cincinnati College of Law. Left my job there and attended that school full time and graduated in 2003. So I would say, not nosy, not always in somebody's business, but always trying to make sure that people are treated fairly and that the right thing is done. I truly believe that people should be treated, with the utmost respect, and always jumping in and trying to defend somebody. And she was like, you need to go do this professionally. So that's how that developed.
No, that's amazing, and it kind of led you down this path of service to people, really. And our mutual friend Joyce Powdrill, as a matter of fact, Joyce just stopped by and dropped a comment saying how much she loves your story and that it's very inspiring.
Thank you, Joyce.
Indeed, and Joyce is doing great work out there as well. But that's interesting. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if there's any data on it, but you got your GED and use that to take that next step and end up going to law school. I think is fantastic. Some folks might sell themselves short. You certainly didn't, with good reason. And then, kind of moving on forward past law school, you've had, really a breadth of experience in the law from private practice that you mentioned, working for the city of Cincinnati in a number of capacities, and then as a magistrate. Am I right on that?
Yes. So just to step back for a bit, I will have to say that I'm a big believer in community. Community is very important. And although it may look like I achieved it by myself, GED to JD, I had a wonderful community and village. I had wonderful mentors. I had wonderful examples in my family. So although I was the one who went through it, I always had people who encouraged me and helped me get there. And I honestly believe that you can be the sum total of your village. No one gets anywhere by themselves. And I was blessed enough early enough to have a very strong village to encourage me. And although I might have felt like, a GED was a failure, they were like, no, that's just the beginning. You're too smart. You can do anything. So first, let me just say and recognize the community and community support is very important. And you're right, though. When I graduated from law school, I went to the prosecutor's office in the city of Cincinnati, handling misdemeanors, traffic, vehicular homicides, and I stayed there for about 18 months. And then because of my paralegal background, they thought I was a good candidate to move over to the civil side, which handles matters like municipal taxes, employment cases, and administrative law cases, claims and collections, civil matters. So I transferred to the civil side and worked in the general division under who is now Judge Terry Nestor, who was my supervisor at the time. And a opportunity came up that I didn't see. There was an attorney who left the office recently, and he was in charge of trying to recoup and recover money in delinquent water bills and money owed to the city. And when he left, he just kind of left it in disarray. And so I was presented with the challenge of trying to clean it up. And I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity to succeed. I'll take the challenge. And so I actually created what is now a very successful part of the law department. It's like its own business, the claim and collections area. I staffed it. I hired not most of the personnel now, but I hired the personnel, wrote the proposal to the city manager at the time to staff and fund the section. I made sure that I met with all the city departments to try to get buy-in because there had been some damage. We tried it before and just couldn't get any lift, any energy behind it. So I made sure that I met with everybody and tried to build trust and rapport and say, look, if you trust me, you won't be sorry. I'll make this successful. And by the time I left the city and was appointed as a magistrate, we were recovering over $1 million a year. So from what I know, the section still exists and they're way beyond the $1 million mark now. And it's fully staffed with multiple attorneys and multiple paraprofessionals. So I take a lot of pride in the fact that that's the legacy I left at the city. But now, go ahead.
Sorry. Let me just interject right there. I mean, that's pretty important stuff because, there's other things involved. Obviously, if you're a judge, you're running a courtroom. You're also managing folks. You have staff and people that work for you and different things like that. And so, you've got a breadth of experience there, even for the management side and leadership and working with people and creating this whole new division or section, I guess you would call it. And so that's maybe some background that not everybody in the legal profession necessarily has.
I would agree. Part of being a judge is being able to run the courtroom, and that means you have to be able to lead. Leadership is an action word, is an example. It's not a title or position. So you have to make sure that you set the tone. Leadership trickles down from the top. Everyone follows your example. And so it was nice to have that training. I was mentored in that regard as well. I had, Judge Nestor. There was Rashani Harden. There were a lot of people at the city that I could look to and talk to. I will say again, I have not reached anywhere in my career alone. I've always had some wonderful mentors. I worked alongside Judge Mallory, Dwayne Mallory. He worked in that section with me. So I have been, I want to say, mentored by the best and have really benefited from that networking and learning at the feet of people who did it before I did. So You're right. Part of being a judge is being able to run a courtroom. You are responsible for hiring staff. Sometimes there are contract matters. I had contract oversight for our vendors for outside counsel. I had to make sure that they were compliant with the contract, made sure that they were performing as, as as spelled out in the contract. So, it's more to being a judge than just knowing the law. You have to be able to run a courtroom. There are times when you have to deal with contract matters. But the most important thing is what I think I have experience is building rapport. The position that I created and stepped in needed a little bit of rehab. It needed a little of a restoration. There had been some deficiencies before, and I came in to try to get people to buy in, to trust me. And in doing that, we were very successful. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't hard. It wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always, I want to say, it wasn't always a smooth transition. But at the end, it definitely was worth it, and the results speak for themselves. So that's kind of what I hope to do with the drug court.
Well, yeah, and so I want to kind of bring it up, fast forward a little bit. Talk about your experience then moving on from the city of Cincinnati in the law department there to your experience on the bench as a magistrate, which probably most folks know that a magistrate fulfills a lot of the roles or a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for?
Responsibilities.
It's a lot like being a judge.
It is. Well, it's actually called a magistrate judge. So I do the exact same thing that a judge does, just on lower level cases. The cases that they handle are a lot more complex. But I receive evidence, I receive testimony, I judge the demeanor of the witnesses, I swear in oaths, I write decisions, I listen to motions, I make decisions, objections. Unfortunately, there are some times when I impose sentences. There are times when I give sentences. There are times when I release people from those sentences. So I do the exact same things that judges do, just on a lower level, complex level, and they're elected and I'm appointed.
Right. Having said that, it's an amazing experience for kind of the next sensible step then to actually get on the bench. And so tell us a little bit more about, and one of the things I've gotten great feedback on in the show when we've had, folks on running for different various offices telling us things about the offices we might not even know. Tell us a little bit about the drug court. That's a part of common pleas court, right? And what specifically, obviously drugs, but what does that mean? How does it differ from just the regular common pleas court judge?
It's a specialized docket, the Commission on Specialized Dockets. It's Local Rule 27, and I think it's 2951 of the Ohio Revised Code, which sets out the rules for in lieu of conviction. So the technical term is it is a therapeutically oriented judicial approach that provides court supervision and appropriate treatment to individuals who are suffering from drug addiction. In layman's terms, what that means is it is supervised by the Ohio Supreme Court. It is not adversarial, and it provides treatment in lieu of felony convictions. If you have a felony 4 or a felony 5, you're automatically referred to that docket, and the judge has some discretion to admit others charged with felonies as long as they're not felonies. If they have felony convictions, as long as they're not felony convictions of violence.
Just even for my own clarification on that, does that include, is that just drug possession? Like felony would be something like a cocaine possession or crack or meth or heroin.
Right.
Is it possession, or does trafficking fall under that as well? Or is that separate because that's not the users, that's somebody who's selling?
Right. Trafficking is separate. It's the felony 4 and the felony 5 possessions. Like trafficking and felonies of violence are not permitted. The court has some discretion, but the statute is very specific to those things.
I got you. So, well, then my follow-up to that is, I think this is something that's very important in the community, because we know that much of our crime, in particular property crime, it stems from folks that have addiction issues. And so when you have that addiction, that's your only concern. And you'll steal anything that's not locked down. If you have a physical need for that next fix, or the mental, all the triggers of addiction, that's what you're worried about. So we see so many other negative outcomes that come out of this. And so what are the types of things that the drug court can specifically do to help address those issues, to try to get to some of these root causes for the crime that's actually coming out of that thing?
Well, right now they have an LICDC, which deals with chemical and drug dependency. So they basically perform an assessment for residential or outpatient treatment. I would like to hire a master's level social worker, so that not only can she perform those tasks, but she can also connect the individual with social services. So if there's a housing issue, if there's an employment issue, if there is an education issue, or if there's sexual trauma, I would like to hire someone who can actually work closer with the individual to actually get to the underlying issues of the addiction and have those treated more closely, or get individualized treatment. Right now, we don't have that level of counseling for everyone. There are some programs from drug court that offer that, but I think individuals who are suffering from substance abuse addiction would best be treated if you can deal with the traumas. Let's be honest. Someone who has been accused of burglary, the property owner doesn't want them to come back. They don't necessarily want them to go jail. But if you can treat the fact that they broke it, so the reason they broke in is because they need somewhere to smoke or to inject. So the property owner just wants them off their property. So if you can get the person sober, if you can get the person, address the housing needs, and address the employment needs, and then address the root cause of the addiction, you have a better chance of that person not returning to that property and reoffending than if you just deal with the addiction issue. And that property owner is going to be happy because now they don't have to deal with the recidivism rate or the damages that may come with someone breaking in. So burglary is one of those. I mean, the breaking and entering is one of those that you have to look at the root cause. If the root cause is the reason for the criminal offense, then you have to treat the addiction and not look at the criminal offense. You have to look at what caused it. And I just don't know that we always do that currently.
Well, no, we don't. I mean, that's the reality. And I think also it's something that, is important. And we're going to talk a little bit more here in a bit just about the slate, the Democratic slate, and all the judges, and the success that we've had kind of from a political perspective in pushing that slate and getting folks elected in 2018, and now I believe more so in 2020. But it's this differing approach in terms of kind of the old school ways, lock them up, throw away the key. But the reality is these folks are going to get back out, right? And so if they are still addicted, if we have not looked at or addressed any of the underlying issues, they're going to be right back to doing things that they were doing before. And so how do we solve for that? And I think some of these things, like having a drug court and using all of the aspects of it that we can, is very important to do that. Is there data to back that up as well that we know of?
So I do know that the drug court has data collection responsibilities. I'm not sure how accessible it is to the public, and I'm not sure how current that information is, but I know that there is a report that's due the 15th of every month. But I think that's part of the issue, is that we don't have transparency. We don't have the ability to look at the individuals that come through the court and see where they are. We can't look at the access, who's allowed in. We don't look at the rejection rates, and we can't look at the graduation rates or the recidivism rates. So part of what I would like to change is to collect that data and also make it available to the public, so that there's a way to measure if the drug court is being successful. So I know that there's a requirement of that report. I just can't answer if it's accessible to the public and if it's current at this time.
Right. Well, and that's one of the complaints that I've heard overall of kind of the current overall operation of the Hamilton County Courthouse, is there is very little transparency to it. There's not a lot of data out there to know about, discrepancies in sentencing and those kinds of things. And so I've heard that from a number of other candidates that we've had on, talking about this is something we need to solve kind of in the bigger scheme at the Hamilton County Courthouse. So I'm glad to hear you talking about that as well. There's a couple notes here. We've got Sarah Thomas dropping by, says Nicole is fantastic. She says she's already voted for you and excited to see you on the bench as a judge. And our mutual friend, Carrie Bloom, who was on the show running for juvenile court judge as well, stops by to say hi. So we appreciate that.
I do.
So speaking of Carrie and the rest of the Democratic endorsed slate for our judicial slate, tell us a little bit more about the strategy, how that's been working, the feedback that we're getting kind of on the streets in terms of, we weren't that organized maybe years ago in the past, and we've started to do that in 2018. We saw the power of that slate starting to make inroads where, Republicans have controlled the Hamilton County Courthouse for a century or more. And how is this working now, and from the campaign perspective in the slate?
Well, first I would have to say the people that I'm on the slate with are absolutely amazing. It's the most diverse slate that the Democratic Party has ever put up, as far as years of experience, legal experience, lived experience, gender, race. It's wonderful. It truly is reflective of the community. How is it going on that campaign trail? I will say, from my standpoint, energy, the energy and the need for change is just amazing. I know I've been at the BOE almost every day since early voting started, and I can tell you that line at 7 o'clock is wrapped. And you would think we're in the second, almost third week of voting, and it hasn't slowed down. People are coming. They're coming with the slate because there's been this enormous effort for lit drops countywide. I mean, there's first, second, third passes. It's just, like I said, it's amazing. But people come to the board and they have that paperwork. They have that sample ballot. And if they don't, they're crossing, they're coming up, and they're getting that ballot. So I think we're doing awesome. I think it's a 20-1. We're taking that blue slip. People are thanking us. Like, I can't believe people are, thanking us for being out here. This is what I need. We need change. I'm voting all the way down the ticket. I've heard that consistently since early voting has started.
Well, that's great to hear, and we're glad that we have that energy, especially for the judicial slate. And I don't think we can repeat this enough, that when you go in to vote, there's no D or R by the judges' names. And so, you get in a scenario where people either, I don't know, so I leave it blank, or worse yet, they guess or flip a coin. I don't know what they do. But you definitely see the drop off in the numbers, like almost everybody who's going to vote for president. And then as you go down. So a lot of times we're suggesting even turn your ballot over, start at the back at the bottom and work your way up. But whatever it is, make sure you've got that slate card either on your phone or the piece of paper so we can see who our judges are. And I think we started to see that in 2018. I did a fair amount of field work for the judicial slate in 2018, and we started to see that pay off with the data in terms of there wasn't as much drop off, and hopefully we continue to improve on that. And what I just see across the landscape is, to your point, the slate and everybody kind of pushing the slate and working together well as a team, and I think that's important to do.
Well, what I will have to say is it's just not the slate, it's the people on the slate. Like they are like-minded, they are committed to substantive criminal justice change, and they are available and accessible. What I have seen on the campaign trail is everyone is out there. We're talking to people. We're making sure they're educated. The slate is a wonderful tool, but it's also nice to know that I can talk intelligently about anyone. I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can answer any question. And that's nice to know too, because I've had people say, well, thank you for the slate, but why should I vote for this person? Or what is their platform? Or are they really committed? So I think the slate is wonderful. I am fully behind it, but I also like the fact that we have slate We have people on the slate who have actively engaged with the community and have tried to educate the community about who we are. So many times people don't know the judges. They don't see them as working individual people who are part of the community, with some ominous person that sits behind an ivory tower. And I can say this slate this year has been very purposeful and very deliberate about engagement, about being accessible, about asking questions, about answering questions, and about promising, accountability and transparency. And I think that, coupled with the slate, is what has just driven the energy for change this year.
Well, and I love seeing it just not only as I was a candidate in 2017 for council, coming back in 21. And so I appreciate it from that perspective, but just as a citizen, to see folks out there and making those personal connections, and even, folks coming on here and having these conversations, we're able to share through social media because, we can't, especially in these COVID days, necessarily talk face to face with every single person that we want to. But people really appreciate that personal touch and kind of getting to know you as an individual, I think. Or at least that's the feedback that I get. So it sounds like you're hearing the same thing.
I agree. I do. Every day that I'm at the board, it just amazes me how people are happy to see you there. They're glad to engage. I was just telling someone today, I've taken so many selfies with people I never knew before because they can't believe that the candidate is right there. And I'm like, well, where else will we be? That's what we're talking about, being accessible and engaging. And so that's just been amazing.
Well, and one of the things I see from the other side of the aisle is they have a tendency to, kind of run these remote, like money-powered campaigns, so you don't actually have to be out there doing stuff, and you can separate and from the people and just pay for a bunch of, campaign commercials or attack ads or whatever. And definitely the grassroots is where we come from, and I'm very proud of that. And so I know we've seen each other a lot out on the trail, and that's good stuff, and I think that people appreciate it. So, with that, I just jotted a couple notes as we were chatting here, and a couple of the common themes that I'm hearing, which we just really summed up: community, mentorship, which I think, one day we're relying on that, and then as we achieve certain things and we're able to help others out in those same ways, and rapport. And all of that's about this just kind of personal connection, staying connected to the neighborhoods and our communities and the people at the end of the day, I think is just really good stuff when you're in public service. And so those are cool themes, and I certainly appreciate that from you. So this kind of in closing, we talked about how quick a half hour goes here.
I know, right?
We're on 29 minutes. How can we help? I mean, tomorrow is 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks out from Election Day as of tomorrow. We're having the early voting is still taking place in numbers, but a lot more votes to come in on Election Day. If I want to help, what's the best way I can get engaged here? It's so important that we stay energized over these last 2 weeks.
So I'm going to give you a quick list. The first thing you can do is vote. The second thing you can do is grab 4 or 5 other people and take them to the polls and vote also. But make sure they're informed. We all have websites. We all have Facebook pages. Do your research. I can't tell you who to vote for. You know what slate I'm on, and you know if I could, who I would tell you to vote for. But what I will tell you to do is do your research. There's a marked difference between the candidates this year in commitment to change and transparency, accessibility. Do your research, and once you've figured out who you want to vote for, be an advocate. You can phone bank, you can work the polls, and we still have some lip drops to do. But the most important things, top 3, vote, take 4 or 5 other people to vote, and do your research so that you know who you're voting for.
No, that's good stuff. That is great advice. I've actually just put your website up on the screen here, NicoleSandersForJudge.com. And it's one of those weird quirks for those that have watched the show when we've had other judicial candidates on. They're not actually allowed, even though they need campaign contributions, they're not actually allowed to ask for them, but I'm allowed to ask on your behalf. So everybody go to NicoleSandersForJudge.com. drop a little contribution on there, sign up to volunteer, reach out to Nicole for more information. She's one of the most accessible people of a very accessible slate out there. And if nothing else, you can find her at the Board of Elections almost every single day.
Yes,
out
you
there.
can.
So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was very informative. We'll learn more about the drug court and more about your amazing background. And I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see you on the bench.
So what I would like to say is thank you for the opportunity to chair. I am really committed to the community, and I really believe that community engagement is key. I want people to know who I am beyond the bench, and opportunities like this are priceless. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Always great to have you on, and I'll probably see you down at the BOE sometime this week.
You will. Early mornings, lunchtime, afternoons. Actually, after this Friday, I'll be there every day, all day. So if you want to come out and hang out with me and ask questions, I'll be there. And
get a selfie, but you might have to wait in line. So, Nicole, thank you so much. Everybody, for me, it's at Derek Bauman. We're up on Twitter now, live, YouTube, and here on Facebook as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And Nicole, thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
All right. Take care.